The Big Sale Illuminati, where some of the best in the business discuss what's worked, what's working, and what's failed in selling big sales. Our panel of experts includes Clarity Seeker, a black belt of brands, our snarky marketer, Monique de Maio. CEO to CEO selling is his game. Fortune 500 in his lane. The Lex Luthor of the close, Mark Kennedy. The effective executive, a force on the boards, a buyer on fire, Tiffany Olson. David versus Goliath selling, the prince of process, Sun Tzu of big sales strategy, Tom Searcy. And that's your panel. Now it's time to talk about big sales.
Well, we got the Big Sale Illuminati panel here today, and very excited. It's 2023. Lots to talk about, especially because it's 2023. Everybody's planning. Everybody's looking, what are my goals? What are my quotas going to be like? The buyers are looking around saying, how much money do I have? Don't I have? Do I change out my vendors? We're going to cover a lot of that today. First thing we're going to talk about is messaging for 2023. How do you get in and hold the attention of the buyers that are out there? Second thing we're going to really talk about is what are the core activities that you have to do to be successful, and especially sales leadership, sales people that we've got, even folks that are doing, at distance selling. We're going to talk about that. And we want to get a chance to talk about what were some of the big revenue generating mistakes that happened in 2022. We may not get to all of this today, and if we don't, then we'll put it in the next episode. But I want to start off with the idea of the messages for 2023. It's, we had messages that we used for 2020, and those were related to what was going on in that environment. And then 2021 and 2022, 2023 is different game, different motivations. What's going to get through as far as messages out there, trends, insights, or whatever. I'm going to toss it to you, Monique, and then we'll go to Mark, and then we're going to go to the buyer on fire, Tiffany. So Monique, hey, you're a messaging person. Help us to understand what are the messages that we got to shape differently for this next year.
Well, first things first. Thank you, Tom. First things first, I think this whole notion of pandemic, and people are so sick of hearing the word COVID. They're sick of hearing the word pandemic. My clients are telling me they're sick of the word hybrid. They're sick of the new normal. So there's like a whole list of do not says, right? New normal, hybrid, pandemic, COVID. And then there's, the business at hand, which is who are you really? And I hate to say it, but authenticity and being really aligned with your core customers has never been more important. So this notion of
I got to stop you for just a second. I hear authenticity, and this sounds terrible. What do you mean by authenticity, right? How do I sound more real?
Okay, so there was just an article in Inc. magazine on purpose-driven brands. And some of the brands that were listed in there were like Allbirds and Patagonia, Panera, Burt's Bees, Tesla, Pfizer. You get the idea. They're very clear about what they stand for, what they're out to accomplish, what they're out to do. And customers who resonate with that message, with that aligned, purpose, are going to find them, and they're going to find each other, right? That's an authentic match. That's a customer and a brand meeting in the middle and going, this is who I am. And if you're with me and you want to be part of this club, then come on in. But I'm not going to pretend I'm going to be all things to all people, or I'm not going to make a fake statement. I'm trying to think of a brand off the top of my head that's tried to be
I'll throw that in, and then I'd love to hear what either you or anybody else has to say. I'll tell you the one's got a muddy message right now. Twitter has a muddy message. Who am I? What do I mean? What do I stand for? So I think that's a muddy message.
It's a hugely muddy message. Hugely. Yeah. You can't on one hand say, I want to be the arbiter of free speech and then take people down, right? So it's like, oh, you don't agree with me. So your free speech is not as important as his free speech because he agrees with me and you don't. So that's an
by the way, I bought this place so we wouldn't have that problem. So Tiffany, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I wanted to say something just about authenticity in general. So I also think authenticity goes to the individual salesperson when they are in front of the customer. My very first sales job, I had to memorize a 9-page speech and reiterate it in the week of training that I had. And they graded us for how many times we missed. that going into a customer and then regurgitating that is not authentic to you personally. So I think authenticity really comes across not only when you have a brand whose purpose you stand behind, but when you can genuinely and authentically talk about the benefits and the value and just bring your own personality to that. So that's actually one of the things. I just did a leadership class on leading authentically, and it's a lot about that exact same thing.
Well, that's awesome. So that's why she's the buyer on fire and I'm not. But
she is the buyer on fire. I've
Right.
actually got a little bit of a different take on authenticity these days in the market. I think what they mean by authenticity is be authentic, but be better than you really are. And it's it's driven.
Being your best authentic self.
That's exactly right. Be that company that you always thought you should be is what I think it means these days. And I think it's driven off of the sustainability and the DEI messaging that's in the market right now. That's the I don't know if you guys see this too, but I see a lot of fear in the market right now. And the one place that's a safe haven from that fear, and the one place that I think the CMO and the CFO can agree, is that they need to be activating their purpose around sustainability and DEI. I've seen that kind of over and over, very familiar with the pivot to purpose-driven brands from positional brands. And I think, to throw a shout out to a fantastic podcast, which is Stengel CMO podcast, where he's basically driving purpose over and over. That's Jim Stengel. Those folks are doing some great stuff. And, my clients that are trying to change their pivot and their messaging in the market right now are moving towards telling an authentic story around sustainability, and I kind of laugh about it because it's both authentic and it's aspirational at the same time. So, I think I've seen those stories get funded when a whole lot of other, more traditional branding exercises are kind of falling by the wayside right now.
Yeah, Mark,
Monique,
more because there are two words that I think are important for 2023: uncertainty. So if you're out there selling, if you can get certainty, and for me, certainty is the supply chain, because without inventory, I can't sell anything. So is there something in price stability? Because heaven only knows what's going to happen in this market over the next 12 months. And is there visibility in where my stuff is in that supply chain so that I have certainty? And so for me, if someone can come in and say, I can help you in this uncertain market, minimize those risks, I'm all in. The other one is that sustainability. The other one is that sustainability. Yeah. So I sit on several boards, and ESG, which is environment, social, and governance, is huge. And for people that might think ESG, what really is that? It's very easy to think of. It is a company's commitment to the planet and their people. So how are they being environmentally and socially responsible while being ethical? And that's really what ESG is about. It's on every single board agenda, no matter where you go. So if you can help. And
Tiffany, someone flipped a switch. This was all window dressing for like the last 10 years. It was like one of those things, we're going to be done. And now it's shifted into, no, we got to make this actionable and real. And I really feel like we went from, we were playing charades until now we're playing serious board defining, budget defining decisions.
Can I segue off of
let me just say this and then I'll turn over the mic. So in April, the SEC proposed very tough new rules on how companies need to identify this. And so come 2024, that's when companies have to report. There's 3 scopes that companies need to report, and they're difficult. So that's why this is the topic on fire in the boardrooms. Anyways, I'll turn it over to Monique.
No, it's what I was going to segue off of what you're saying, Tiffany, but it's beyond. So I was going to get to the sustainability part of the messaging thing, but it's beyond messaging and beyond all of it, because now Wall Street is aligning on those variables and those factors. I was involved in a project for one of our clients is the Loan Syndication Trading Association, and they're one of the multiple trade associations that have gotten together and created what they call a standardized or They call it normalized. There's a bunch of different words that they use, but it's an ESG criteria template that companies have to go through before they can qualify for lending. So literally their credit scores, their credit availability, their access to capital, their access to all of that, is dependent on how they fill out this standardized ESG criteria. And so you go to this website and now you can download the criteria template and you fill it out. And now the lenders, both sides, the buy side and the sell side, are agreeing that this is going to be the new norm. No, can't say that. The way by which everyone is going to be judged, because that is now agreed that is within the E and within the S and within the G, what a company should be doing.
I think there's definitely been a pivot in the last couple of years. Like 10 years ago, the kind of classic business case study was that organizations don't account for the total cost of production, right? They didn't actually count for their carbon footprints. They didn't count for the amount of waste they're creating. So certainly the environmental and sustainability side of it has been a big pivot in the last couple of years. I also think for whatever reason, the electrification movement that's happening right now is also I think those two things are part and parcel with each other. And I think they positively reinforce each other. I think what Tesla's done for, the innovative side of cars, making electric cool. It's not a golf cart anymore. It's a status symbol, obviously, in California and other places. And then some of the new entrants in the markets I've seen on that too, like the trucks, the Rivian trucks are insanely innovative. I think those things are moving in the same direction. And I just think that's one of those, that's a with the tide kind of move in the marketplace right now.
I think I'd say this about what you just said is when you talk about as the tide in the marketplace, some oddities. All right. I want to see some oddities. So, Coca-Cola came out in the third quarter shareholders meeting and put it as one of their top 4 actual initiatives that they are going to measure against and move forward against. And so they put that out to all their shareholders. Makes sense, right? Microplastics and all of the waste that goes out, et cetera. I read down an insurance newsletter and looking at the top 10 that are out there in the insurance industry, including property and casualty, et cetera. They put sustainability into their messages. Much harder issues to measure as far as what their initiatives are, but they're out there. So my point is the breadth of this, and that's going to bring us back to the conversation on messaging. Sustainability has to be integrated, it would seem, into the messages, and it has to be authentic. Whenever we're talking to somebody, I love what you said, Monique, was the idea that when you're representing yourself, out there, there has to be clarity of this is who we are. I like Mark's point, which is this is who we are, and then tomorrow will be a little bit better. That was Mark's point, was the authentic. Sure. I know I can't help.
Your memory loss. It was Tiffany, but that's okay. It was me. We look alike. It's hard to tell us apart, so I could see why that was.
I was trying to attribute some of the really smart stuff to you that Tiffany. Oh wait, I'm sorry. Did I say that out loud? So
I know I need the help because she's much smarter than me. So
well, I think it's going to get tested by fire, right? If the things go the way they're going in the economy, and the markets are down, and it's gonna really fire test the message, and it'll put this in terms of ingraining it into what is company's DNA. I think what's going to happen in the next year in the market is going to further drive this into the boardroom and drive it into really the sales process. I have to say I haven't within my own teams done a lot of positioning around how we're going to reinforce our own ESG activities and initiatives, but I can see that it's on the horizon.
Well, I think that inside of that, and Tiffany, you're in the boardrooms a lot with the boards that you're on. If you're a salesperson, let's bring it down to ground level. If you're a sales organization that's out there, step number one is you better understand the terms, the language, the legislative pushes that are going on for their businesses. You can't just simply say, well, we don't have a lot going on because we're all digital and we don't do anything. Well, if you're going to go sell to somebody, that's the folks that are going to have that language. It better be in there, to Mark's point, as a part of that. if you're on a board and companies are looking to change their own initiatives on your boards, or companies are coming in to sell significant things to the companies that you're working with, how does that have to show up in the world of just language? We use ESG, which I'm really grateful that you gave us a definition of that, but there's other terms that need to become almost a part of the common use, or otherwise you kind of get disqualified as being irrelevant. What would those look like?
Oh, I think when you talk about net carbon zero, greenhouse gas, all of those things as it comes to climate change, and really being able to understand what the particular company that you're selling to, where they kind of land on that and where they need to go. In healthcare, which is my area, if healthcare, I'll try to get this stat right, if healthcare were a country, healthcare would be the 5th largest contributor to greenhouse gas emissions.
Wow.
So when you think about that, our whole industry in healthcare needs to go through substantial change on how do you do repackaging? What type of gases are you using to cool equipment, those types of things. So if you're a salesperson and you've got a solution to help with that, it is really, really powerful. And Tom, to your point, what are the buzzwords that you need to use so that it sounds like you're part of the family? Because that's really what it all is about, is I need to be able to trust you because I need to feel that you understand what my issues are. So some of those buzzwords, uncertainties, cyber attacks, cybersecurity, all of those things are really top of mind in the boardroom.
Yeah, Monique, you're working on messages all the time, and we're talking about this. We could spend a whole episode just working through the messaging, and we'll spend more time on ESG. But what are some of the other buzzwordy kind of relevant topic issues that I'm going to say kind of have more of an oil, this is bad, have more of an oil slick. Let's just say that olive oil, more of an olive oil slick where you pour them in, they're kind of go into every conversation. What are some of those that you see have to be in the messaging?
It's interesting. It was a perfect segue from what Tiffany started to say, because this whole cybersecurity is huge, and we have a couple clients in that space. And now it's everyone's peppering every single point solution in information technology with this notion of a security layer and a security message. And it's very confusing to the end user buyer or the customer, and notwithstanding the end user. And so that to me is an overused term. It's literally baked into everything. It's getting ridiculous. The hybrid work environment and the facilitation of the hybrid work environment is an old story now, but it's still overused, and people are still baking it into their, value proposition. And I'm like, this is not differentiating, people. This is not differentiating. I'm sorry, you sound just like your competitors. Just substitute your logo. It's the same goddamn thing. Oh, sorry. Did I say that out loud? Sorry. So,
it's all right. We'll bleep. We've got
the
pause button. We got the pause button on you every time you're talking. So don't worry about it.
Exactly. So that is one. And this idea of sustainability too is getting peppered into as a throwaway. We're a sustainable company. I'm like, well, what does that mean? What are you doing?
And Monique, I think you're absolutely right, because as these buzzwords, then to really tie that sale in, you need to go down that next level, and then the next level, which means you really need to understand what's behind that specific to that company. But absolutely agree with you.
Do you think wait, let me ask a follow-up question. Do you guys think that companies, when they decide that they're just going to be like, oh, I'm the best at X, do you think that the salespeople, A, buy into it, and B, understand how to communicate any of this?
Wow. I'm sorry. Could you just throw a conversational grenade into this conversation? Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Do you think anybody understands in this? Please speak to the audience directly. So,
if it's good,
we're going to throw this to Mark. Mark's been uncharacteristically quiet.
I think sales organizations are a horrible proxy for customers. They're fundamentally flawed, of course, but
that's right.
No, to answer your question, I don't think they buy into it. I think there's a high degree of cynicism, at least amongst the good ones. There's so much noise around to Monique's point, there's so much noise around the positioning, and there's so much, homogeny around it that I think it falls flat. It doesn't give them an advantage, and therefore it's probably not going to stick.
Tiffany, what do you think?
Oh, I'm an optimist. I think that the good, well-run companies are going to, one, listen to their customers, but listen to the salespeople. And as you get salespeople together to say, what is the messaging? How do you deliver it? You're going to learn from each other, and you're going to be able to form that to where it does make sense. But like I said, I'm an optimist. I believe in sales leadership and marketing and bringing all those things together to be the best authentic salesperson.
All right, so I'm,
I have some cybersecurity software I'd like to sell you.
That's right. I have some sustainable cybersecurity offerings I'd like to sell to you.
That's right. And by the way, our supply chain management is completely carbon neutral. So I want to put I want to put this in. Look, we're the Big Sale Illuminati, so it's about big sales that are out there. I'm going to challenge a little bit of what being said about salespeople and the message. I think the message is always about what is the message and the initiative of the company to whom you're selling. Your relevance is about what their carbon footprint is. So training salespeople to speak about carbon footprint and et cetera, you need to know the words so that you're relevant in the conversation. But the second thing is you need to know the questions to find out more about what their carbon footprint or their ESG or whatever their strategy or impact is that's supposed to be out there. If you don't know, for example, the insurance companies, if I had not looked and done the research, I would not know when I was talking to an insurance company, why is it that you guys are looking at this? What caused that? Why did you guys put it in your top 3? And how are you going to measure it? What KPIs do you have around that? How much money are you spending? It's not so much how much money we're spending or how much we fit those, because my job is to help you with your issues. So it's equip them with the number or the words and equip them with the questions to dig for relevance between us and them.
Yeah, but you can't equip them with the questions if their product, service, solution, whatever they call it, isn't really helping that KPI. So you can be a great salesperson, but the bag that you're carrying does not connect the dots with what that customer's pain point is. So if it does, then you
right. No. I disagree. I'm going to disagree. Look, I get what you're talking about. I am not going to join in with the idea of a scripted conversation or a sales group that's going to open up a bag and have this. Not a big sales. The first conversation with everybody. Now, this I know this group's going to agree with. The first conversation you have with anybody is you walk in with a Moleskine or other kind of a journal and a pen, and you start to ask questions and have conversations. That's the best first sales conversation. I think everybody here would say the questions are more important to everything else. Because if we were going to talk about, for example, everything that has to do with your ESG, my KPIs are nowhere near as their KPIs. Coca-Cola is going to have a different KPI than Progressive, and so I think in part you're right. We have to have the whole table of our own language about our own businesses and et cetera, and then we have to have somebody else walk by that buffet and say, these are the pieces off the buffet that I'm going to pick off and say that's important. Mark's sitting there saying, oh, here we are at the Metaphor Bar and Searcy's pouring drinks. So
that's good.
I love it though.
Yeah, fill in the blank. We talked about a number of things, but I mean, Monique, you were talking about that idea of kind of throwaway words. You talk about, is there anything more throwaway than supply chain management?
Oh my God.
I mean, it's everywhere.
Well, it's also the today's scapegoat. If you can't deliver on a promise that you made to a customer, it's the supply chain. It's never like, oh, we messed up. We didn't really, walk your order through the process properly. We didn't cross our T's or dot our I's. We're understaffed. It's the supply chain. Okay.
So how do we tell, shape our messages, our conversations? How do we deal with that? Because if I'm out there and I'm selling and I'm a part of the supply chain and my customers are truly, literally hitting me on the head with the fact that I'm making promises I can't keep, I'm in a marketplace that they can't understand, and on and on. And Talk to me about, because that language around supply chain, that's not going to finish out. If you read the economic reversions on this, we're looking middle of 2024 before that's all going to shake out to back to what we want to call a predictable and normal supply chain management speed. Well, that's 18 months from now. What are salespeople and sales organizations going to say about supply chain management security? I've set up the question. Somebody else, I'm hoping there's a really smart answer here because it's an important question.
Well, I'll make an answer. I don't know how smart it is, but I will say that with supply chain uncertainty, visibility into where things are at. So if you're a salesperson for a company, having the ability to know whether or not your customer can get the product and when is key. So communication internally when you're with a company is extremely important. A lot of companies struggle with that because frankly, there's not all that much or hasn't been that much visibility in where all of the pieces, parts are that are going into making whatever the product may be. And I also think then from the customer side, if anybody has something that helps me with visibility, helps me with minimizing that risk, knowing transportation, the knowing what's in the warehouse, knowing when I can get it somewhere, that is really a very, very valuable product.
That's great. Yeah. Good.
Yeah. I'd lean in for this, and then I'm going to come down into Mark on this one. So I serve on a couple of boards. One of them is a supplier out in the marketplace of chemicals and other kinds of mixed pieces that are raw materials out there. And another one is a buyer in the construction side of the industry and is buying materials. So I'm listening to both sides talk about this thing called dynamic pricing, right? Dynamic pricing means basically an hour by hour auction pricing, that says, okay, fine. If you buy a week's worth of this stuff within the next 30 minutes, I'll set this price. After that, I can't guarantee it to you because there's another person out there. Well, so the chemical side of the house is, look, I can go ahead and have dynamic pricing and suck up margin and et cetera. And I'm like, okay, great. There's an opportunity to go ahead and underserve in the short-term value your customers. So there's nowhere. Here's your transparency. Show up in a half an hour, Tiffany. That was their version of transparency, which of course is like your customers are going to love you after this is all over.
That's their version.
Right. And then on the construction side, they're talking about the fact that how do I pass along dynamic pricing of steel and wood and everything else to the person who bid who said that they're going to buy my building or my construction of a building for 25 million or 50 million. How do I create? And that's where we're in this idea of two different groups, one on one side, one on the other side. 18 months from now.
Are you referring to like Ticketmaster and Taylor Swift and all the Swifties out there? I mean, that's what got them in trouble. That was the dynamic pricing. They usually
right. Yes, that's a real example.
Marketplace went to infinity pretty quickly.
That's crazy. Yeah. That's a great example, though.
Yeah, I mean, it is a great example. But, in that particular case, Taylor's not the issue. It's what's the price of the seat. Dynamic pricing for a seat. In this case, it would be by the barrel or by the box on the chemical side, and they're getting most of their stuff from overseas. So you are bidding on a product at a price that won't be here except in a window of time at the port in LA, 7 to 10 weeks from now. Okay. By the way, you talk about supply. This goes back to Tiffany's point. You talk about supply chain management security. You feel like you're in a free for all. Monique, you were going to say something.
No, I wasn't. I was clearing my throat. But I think that the Swifties are a great example of that. Well, how's that working out for them?
I heard some crazy statistic, and I wish I would have gotten an accurate capture. But it was like, if she did a concert in a 50,000 seat stadium, she could do a concert a day and fill it up through 2030. It's insane, the demand for what she's doing or what she's providing. I don't know, Tom. I think I've been involved in some of those types of exchanges back in the day when I was doing e-commerce when I was more in the supply chain. We're now more, I've crossed over to the dark side in sales and marketing with our clients. So I don't get too far visibility into the supply chain, but I do think that, I think suppliers don't want transparency into costs. They want to take advantage of inefficiencies in the market. And I think those kind of exchanges exploit the fact that when you get consolidated supply, so, we used to have 15 oil companies. We have 3 oil companies now. You used to have, X number of suppliers of pick a grain or whatnot. So you're looking at sort of almost a spot market or a commodities real-time exchange. And those are, those systems are kind of well tried and true when you don't have diversification. When you have you have a commodity that you can pretty much equally peg in terms of its specifications. The markets work for those. Where I think you have inefficiencies are these very localized versions of different products where there is some differentiation but low numbers of suppliers, and I think that's where you can get killed as a customer. But on the other side of it, if you've got a lot of suppliers, it can drive your costs down. I totally agree with you. I think the home builder example is a tough one where if your inputs are variable but your contracts are fixed. I've built a couple of houses in my day, and the last thing you want to hear when you start on the down the process of a whatever size house is you're 20% over budget before you started because they inflation or whatever. If I knew what and why and where things were right now, we'd probably be, working with the Fed right now or something. But I think there's been think about our market. There's been so much, we've had so many years of no inflation whatsoever.
Yeah.
That, some of the stuff I've been reading lately, like The Economist and other places are talking about the inflation that's coming and the growth that's coming on the real goods side of the house, like the supply of all of the materials that are going to go into I hate to say electrification again, but as the world gets electrified from a transportation perspective, the inflation they're going to see on those raw materials and that they have already seen in those markets are crazy high. So I don't know, man. I think those dynamic markets are killers for the, they might be good for maximizing the short-term supply, supply profits, but I'm not sure they're great for the overall system.
I want to put this out there, and then I'm going to throw this to Monique. This is the Big Sale Illuminati. There's a difference between selling and bidding. So when you go into the commodity world and you're out there in that commodity world, you are basically in an Excel spreadsheet showdown, right? Me, them, buy, rate, and et cetera, because you've completely commoditized. Big sales are not, yes, you can go ahead and bid for fill in the blank, but if you're selling complex issues, right, solving complex problems, your messaging has to be, and even if it's around supply chain, how do you create the kind of conversation that someone says, okay, you get me, you understand what I've got, you see a unique end value for me, because it's not just copper and wire and wood and steel. You're actually selling an integrated solution. So, Monique, I've given as much stretch to you as I can on that question. What's the messaging?
Is there a question in that comment? Is there a question there?
Yeah,
I didn't get the question.
There's a question there. You may have to dig for it. I'm not saying that they're all perfect.
I'm not that smart.
What's the everything I start off with you is what's the message?
Well, see, here's the thing. So there's this guy that I've worked with in the past, and he's got this sales consulting company, and he says you get sent to who you sound like. Does this at all ring a bell? Okay.
It does. Right. It does.
Okay. So that actually is what we're going to pull out for this conversation, which is this. I think depending on who's selling and depending on who's buying, you got to get clear on what their initiatives are, clear on what their objectives are before. And you said go in with a moleskin. I think before you go in with your moleskin, you should have done multiple touch, some research, and spoken to some people that work with and in that company, so that when you show up to the meeting, you're like, hey, interestingly, I've spoken to a couple of your customers, employees, whatever, and this is what I'm hearing. Is that what, knowing full well what some of their obvious public initiatives are? And if you don't have that conversation that the person you're trying to sell to has, you're going to get sent to, if you talk about price and and widget, you're going to purchasing. So good luck, and I'll see you in a couple of years.
Purchasing, right? When I consider to be the children.
Where all deals go to die.
That's right. We're all deal. I wonder how many people are going to have that watch this that are purchasing and then go unsubscribe. We're done.
That's
No,
right.
So
well,
Tiffany, kind of close us out on that particular idea of
Listen, in order to be
messaging for
legit, we've got to have a villain, for God's sakes.
right?
You're
Exactly. The
Oh,
eel.
yeah, as a buyer,
defined by who you're not. So let's just get that out here right now.
right? So the buyer on fire, Tiffany, is always going to be until what you are is the enemy until you're a customer, and then after that, it's still up for grabs.
Then we're a trusted partner with full transparency.
That's right. Right. Me love you long time. That's right.
Yeah, I just going to say I agree with Monique in, do your research ahead of time, go in with the questions. And doing that is what that buyer really wants. And then you can solve their solution or you can solve their problem, hopefully with something that you have. And if you don't, then, you're at the wrong customer.
The best I think the best messaging is the power of a great handful of questions.
Right.
Like you get those right and you own the room.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Exactly.
let's close out this episode one. This is a great episode and a great launching episode. So I want to close out with this, and that is we've talked about the importance of questions. Salespeople and sales professionals and sales teams need to go out and ask questions at that level, right? Because we've talked a lot of meta level. Let's get down into the what am I going to do every day. If you can think of a particular best question to add to that Moleskine that is it's a standard, even though you've done all your research, like Monique is talking, which I think is critical. There's always at least one or two go-to gold-plated questions. I'll start, which I think one of them is what is the absolute threshold of performance that you need to achieve in this particular area. And I use that threshold piece as a way to flesh out things like KPIs and attainments and other kinds of pieces. So once I understand what their business is, I say, what is that threshold that you need to achieve? So that's mine. Who wants to go next?
So
Who wants to go last?
I'll go next. So selling in a very scientific, technical area, many times someone may do a deep dive in the science. So for me, it's tell me more, because I might not be at a point yet where I can make a statement, or how do you do that today? That also
I've seen you do that. I've watched you do that, and you're really good at it, and it's very authentic.
Because I mean it. How do you do it today?
Because you mean it. Because you mean it. No, but you're very good at that. That's a good question to add to it. Mark, I'm gonna go to you. I'm gonna leave.
That was such a buyer question. Oh, God, my palms are literally getting sweaty at the thought of my salespeople giving free consulting to Tiffany. Oh.
She's good at that. She's good at that. Yeah.
So I'll go next. You know me, Tom. Having been this is the ultimate class, the classically trained hunt big sales proponent. The threshold of performance is always first and foremost, because that's the table stakes for playing the game. I also like the question around, tell me what you're teaching your people about, like what were your lessons learned and what are you teaching people about when you've addressed this problem in the past? Because I'm trying to get people to come back around and understand this problem and see their perspective in how they've approached this in the past, so I can try to tie that to where we're headed in the future. So what are you teaching your people about how you've addressed this in the past? What have you learned about this? What are the lessons learned and the things that you've taken away as you've wrestled with this problem before? Because, the best problems are the big abstract problems that people have a hard time dealing with, that they fall into traditional norms. So I want to understand what those implicit and explicit biases are that have gotten into the situation they're in.
Yes, I am a fan of that particular question. I like, I think it pulls through to Monique's point about that, and it has to do with the strategy of where are they going toward the future. Should mean that the leaders, they're setting a cultural norm, some sort of an overall set of KPIs that are, a thoroughfare for everybody to be running on. So, Monique, we're going to take it to you last. You know what she's doing? She's doing the right thing. She's taking notes.
I am taking notes. So for me, it's I used to, when I carried a bag, it's where are you getting stuck? Mm-hmm. Where's the friction? Like, what are you solving for? So if I'm your perfect vendor, what am I solving for you today?
Right.
So if you get to the heart of the greatest pain that they're experiencing, then you can come up with the greatest solution to that pain. But until you really know, like when you ask the question, like, I hate what's keeping you up at night, that's 25 years ago, right? No, nobody says that anymore. But when somebody will say,
I wish, yeah.
2-year-old. Yeah, right. And somebody will make a sex joke, or somebody will be like, my 2-year-old, or something stupid. So you just got to get to a different question. And I think the different question is, where are you getting behave? Where are you getting stuck?
You're an East Coast person, clearly. You're jaded.
I think that question, it just shows a marked lack of preparation. I mean, Tom kills that when he walks in and says, here's 5 things, or here's the 3 most important things that are currently happening in the marketplace. Boom, 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 boom. Right away, that's what's keeping them up at night.
No, I'm sorry, I should have said that. So before you ask where you're getting stuck, because that's a stupid question if you didn't contextualize it with, I'm hearing in your industry that the key problems are, to your point, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Where are you getting stuck? I should have said that, but it's a little early for me.
No, I think that declaration and selection changes the way they think about things. I actually think it's more respectful as a sales professional to the people to whom you're speaking. It demonstrates that you're actually relevant because you know what's going on in the marketplace. You've done some of that. And secondly, you can say, just pick one exit ramp and we'll just talk about that one exit ramp.
I'm glad
because that's the one.
That. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's like if you come in and you go to a technology company, right, and you're talking to them, and it's like, I read in CIO today that the mid-market to enterprise companies are facing these top 5 problems: security, compliance, regulatory, blah, blah. And already the conversation's different because you've already established that you're reading and you're kind of knowledgeable about what other companies are going through. Now tell me what your issue is, sir, ma'am.
One of the best guys that I've seen, best salespeople I've seen, happens to be a guy. His name's Nate, and he walks into a conversation and he knows your business as well or better than you do, and cross references against all of your competitors. It's masterful, and then he's able to then drive down to, here's a differentiation that you not only that you're not making, but that your competitors are making and your customers want. And he's triangulated that in for you, and then asks you, of those 3, which has the greater weight in the discussion. I think we're going to carry this forward to the next. I gave out 3 things that we were going to talk about today. I think we talked not even nearly enough on messaging. So I think we're going to hit that again next time. And when we do that, we're going to take this down more to the team big sale. How do you prepare for messaging conversation? Any shameless plugs where you want to go ahead and plug either your issue, a social issue, a charity that you're involved in, a book or something that you've written or read? Anybody have a shameless plug? I'll start with me.
Tom, we're going to end with you because we know you're shameless. We know you're shameless. I would say.
This is the problem with being transparent. People know you're shameless. I just published 5 children's books. If you look for my name on Amazon, you'll see the 5 children's books.
Would you let her finish?
No, because I know she's going to keep digging at me, and she has no shameless plug except to go ahead.
I do have.
I'm shutting her up for a reason. What's that? You said you bought 2 sets?
Talk about your books.
No, I heard you say 2 sets. The kids' books. Did you read the kids' books? They just came out. Oh, awesome.
I've only read the one because that's the one you gave me.
I bought that one, by the way, just for the record.
You did. There's a Starbucks for me. Actually, so, I'm glad. So anyway, that's my shameless plug. If you got kids between the ages of 3 and 7, grandkids or whatever, it's a book. The books are all designed for you to be able to read them to those people, and all proceeds go to children's charities. That's Tom's shameless plug. Monique, do you have a shameless plug?
I don't.
No upcoming podcast, no upcoming.
Oh, there's going to be a book in 2023 called Designing Your Life in 7 Steps, because I believe in the power of numbers. There's that.
If anybody's reading a favorite book right now, that's good to have. Kennedy, I've given you enough space, and you're the king of the shameless plug. Go ahead.
Goodness gracious. I don't actually have a good shameless plug yet. We've been working like crazy on dropping a new category into to blow up some of the traditional advertising markets. So the old peso model, paid, earned, shared, owned. Ooh. We're in the process of blowing that up with a new platform called Owned Asset Optimization that helps companies directly communicate with their audiences and their people. I'd love to tease some of the content, but we're going to do a big drop in January around that. So just to kind of
we got to hear more about that.
Yeah, it's a big idea. It's gonna mess up some markets hard. So it's exciting. Tom's been instrumental in helping us through some of the positioning and the messaging and just the product prep and the tech for all of it, the people. It's going to be a big deal. Wow. It's a $100 billion idea.
Great.
Yeah. It's very, very cool.
Tell me more.
If we had another hour, we'll do that.
Tiffany didn't go. Yeah.
Visit us at terakeet.com. TERA.
No, not this. Yeah. No, that's all right. Visit us at the Big Sale Illuminati.
It's a shameless plug.
Yes.
For God's sakes, Tiffany, would you say what you were going to say?
Tell me more. Tell me more. Anyway, so here is my shameless plug to kind of close us out, which is, especially given this time of year, a little more than 10% of Americans have food insecurity. So pick up an extra can, drop it by your food shelf. It gets tough this time of year, and anything that you can give is fabulous.
Love it.
Great shameless plug.
It wasn't shameless at all.
No. I mean, it makes all other plugs look shameful.
Makes the rest of us look self-serving.
So good.
Oh, it's easy to be her. She's a buyer. Right? The rest of us are selling something. Money. All right, everybody. Hey, great episode 1. True pleasure. We're going to come back with more messaging. So please forward this to other people. If you like what you're hearing out of this, we're trying to increase the amount of audience that has a chance to hear about big selling. Till we talk again. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to the Big Sale Illuminati podcast. If you like this episode, give us a thumbs up and let us know in the comments. Also, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you're listening on. Until our next episode, best wishes on your big sales.